All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. An investigation is now zeroing in on a private Signal group chat used by far-left activists in the Minneapolis area to coordinate actions aimed at obstructing and interfering with federal law enforcement. And here are a few key points because this isn't speculation anymore. Independent investigators have started pulling at threads. Organizers are being identified, ladies and gentlemen. Coordination patterns are being mapped. Financial support is being discovered. And the same people who were loud, confident, and organized behind encrypted messages are now scattering like roaches when the lights come on. As scrutiny increases, reports indicate federal authorities are aware of the activity and investigating things now. Participants appear to be scrambling, deleting messages, locking accounts, and distancing themselves from the very actions they were bragging about days ago. And even the governor, who was doubling and tripling down, Tim Walz, is now surrendering. So as always, smash the thumbs up button. That's how I know you like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more content and share this video. That way more people see what's really going on. Let's get into it. And so let's start right here because up until this point, Greg Bovino, Border Patrol Commander, has been the face of Trump's Minnesota operations. But now it's been reported that he's been relieved of his duties and that Tom Homan will be the main point of contact on the ground. Let's take a quick listen.
Moments ago, Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him, and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. The governor very respectfully understood that. That is a critically important development.
And so now the question is becoming, why now Tim Walz? Why after doubling and tripling down, why is Tim Walz now deciding that he wants to play ball when he said all along that he refused, that he would not work with federal law enforcement to remove illegal migrants, to remove his residents, that they were the Gestapo, that he was making Anne Frank comparisons, and now suddenly he wants to work alongside, he's going to work with Tom Homan to remove the criminals. Something that Tom Homan, something that President Trump has been saying from the very beginning, give us access to your prisons, give us access to your criminals, hand them over to us. And suddenly now he has the change of heart because this isn't going on in other cities. I know the news, the mainstream liberal media is going to make it seem like this is chaos going on everywhere. But the reality is federal law officers are operating in multiple cities throughout the United States, but in particular, we see this in Minneapolis. And let's not forget, this all started because of the fraud that was being uncovered in Minnesota that led to Tim Walz suddenly, even though his state is doing so well, he's so proud of his Minnesotians, the man don't want to run for re-election. Suddenly he bowing out early, even though he could speak so highly as far as the state of Minnesota. And so let's move on because it's more to it when you start to add the pieces to the puzzle. But let's go on to the next part where with the Signal chats that have been leaked now due to independent journalists, independent investigators being able to infiltrate and leak it. And it's not looking good because you're seeing right away this wasn't, and we knew this wasn't any spontaneous protests. We knew that these were coordinated, organized events. Paid protesters, you could say, for some of this. Getting funding, we're going to see funding from foreigners. We're going to see that connection. I'm going to show you guys in a moment. Minnesota Democrats in these chats helping to coordinate. And so this is far beyond a protest. This is an insurrection. This is domestic terrorism, no matter how much they were trying to stay away from that word. And so now let's get into this next part. We're all left. Rioter's Signal chat was exposed for all their eternal plans, targeting ICE agents, names, threats, illegal acts. Now they panic, talks about fleeing the state or the country. Says right here, what we do now, run. Run where? I don't know. Out of the state, I'm leaving tonight. I don't know what's happening. We're in so much trouble. The jig is up. The jig is up. Signal is not secure. I worked in communications. Once they figure out where we are, It's only a matter of time. Flan has been exposed. Who is Flan? We're going to get into that in one moment. We are all effed. Flan, who is Flan that they're referring to? Allegedly, they're talking about the lieutenant governor, Minnesota lieutenant governor, Peggy Flanagan. Now, if you're not familiar with Peggy Flanagan, here she is right here. As you can see her sporting her hijab, but no, she's not Muslim, but that doesn't stop the liberal white woman from, in this case, in Minnesota's case, pandering to the Somali community.
Assalamu alaikum. My name's Peggy Flanagan. I am the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, and I'm really honored and humbled to be here with all of you today. I am incredibly clear that the Somali community is part of the fabric of the state of Minnesota.
She doesn't have a problem either. Minnesota's Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan instructed leftists to put their body on the line to protest Trump and ICE. And so we think about the fact that you got Minnesota politicians who are in these signal chats. And then suddenly Tim Walz, and now he's calling up Trump saying, hey, let's try to work something out. And then when you actually start to see what they were uncovering in these signal chats, the rioters in Minneapolis, they had access to license plate databases. This proves state involvement. They attacked ICE agents and threatened journalists like Nick Shirley. This proves violence. And so let's get into this real quick. Take a listen.
This is domestic terrorism, and it's operating as a low-intensity insurgency. We've been watching this and just kind of astounded how there's always, these people blowing the whistles wherever ICE is, and they have different undercover vehicles. They try and keep a low profile, and for some reason they keep getting spotted. But James O'Keefe was just up there in Minneapolis and had his life directly threatened. He got a text from a number said, we know you're in X car with this license plate from Florida. If you don't leave within an hour, you're dead. That is insane. That is not only terrorism, but it's showcasing that they have access to license plate identification. They have access to people's cell phones. They have operatives within the police departments or the state government that are providing them with this private secure data. And that shows that this is a top-down insurgency operation. And we saw yesterday, it was all over X, some great accounts, 0 Hour and Cam Higbee showed the signal chats, right? And so you've got 1,000 people in these chats every day. They have organized emojis to mean certain symbols. They have protocols, they have training manuals, and then they also have financing documents. And there's a great tweet from, I think, Data Republican showing that there's actually foreign funding from Canada, a guy named Unchuffed, his organization in Canada. So this has foreign funding. This has state level involvement. The lieutenant governor was found in there. Multiple state representatives and city councilors were found in those signal chats. That is sedition, Steve. If this stuff is leading to violence, to people's deaths, that's insurrection, that's sedition, that's felony murder, that's conspiracy. There is a whole host of charges that members of Tim Walz's staff and campaign staff are involved with. And it is no surprise that they're doing this once their fraud machine was found. It's a pure diversion play, and President Trump has to stay on the offense and take this down, because if he doesn't, and I think he will, but if he doesn't, it will spread to other cities.
Listen, I hope all those people go to jail. Go to jail, lock them up. Lock them up and give everybody whatever you can give them as far as sentencing. Don't go light on them. You want to play? Okay, we're going to show you how we play. That's what I want to see. Hopefully, they can make that happen as far as the Trump administration, as far as handling the case. We're going to get into the investigation that's now going into it, as far as now that these signal chats have been leaked. And so now the FBI is investigating. And so I hope we see in the oncoming months faces, names attached to many of these people who were pulling license plates, showing up at ICE locations, disturbing and impeding federal officers from doing their duties. I hope they're able to apprehend and lock as many of these people up as possible. You about to get torn away from your family now. You was so worried about illegal migrants getting torn away from their family. I hope we see a bunch of people involved in this get torn away from their families. I do. You're threatening people's lives. And to think, this is all started because of the fraud that was going on in Minnesota that got uncovered. And Tim Walz, from there, he just kept on trying to figure some way to distract. But let's get into this next part. We're going to see what happens with that in the future. And I'm going to get into a little bit more of that later on in the video. But I wanted to get to this next part right here because this is very detailed and I thought very important, ladies and gentlemen. So let me read this right here. It comes from Eric Swam, and I hope I'm saying his name correctly, but it says, as a former Special Forces warrant officer with multiple rotations running counterinsurgency ops, both hunting insurgents and trying to separate them from sympathetic populations, I've seen organized resistance up close from Anbar to Hellman, and the pattern is familiar. Spotters, cutouts, dead drops, or modern equivalents, disciplined comms, role specializations, and a willingness to absorb casualties while bleeding the stronger force slowly. Sound familiar? What's unfolding in Minneapolis right now isn't protest. Let me say this part before I continue. Anybody besides those who are trying to continue to push the propaganda in the mainstream legacy media, who really thinks this is actual protest, they're out of their mind. Nonetheless, what's unfolding in Minneapolis right now isn't protest. It's low-level insurgency infrastructure built by people who've clearly studied the playbook. Signal groups at 1,000 members, capped per zone, dedicated roles, mobile chasers, plate checkers, logging vehicle data into shared databases, 24/7 dispatch, nods, vectoring assets, salute-style reporting, size, activity, location, unit, time, equipment as far as the acronym. On suspected federal vehicles, daily chat rotations and time deletions to frustrate forensic recovery. Meaning they delete the chat so that way it's harder to find. No receipts, so to say, but obviously, it's always the way to find stuff like that when you talk about technology. Vetting processes for new joiners, mutual aid from sympathetic locals, teachers providing cover, possible PD, tip-offs on license plate lookups, home-based coordination points, rapid escalation from observation to physical obstruction or worse. This isn't spontaneous outrage. This is C2, command and control, with redundancy, OPSEC hygiene, and task organization that will make a special force team sergeant nod in recognition, replace ICE agents with occupying coalition forces, and the structure maps almost one-to-one to early stage urban cells we hunted in the mid-2000s. The most sobering part, it's domestic, funded, trained somewhere, and directed by people who live in the same country they're trying to paralyze law enforcement in. When your own citizens build and operate this level of parallel intelligence and rapid response network against federal officers, complete with doxing, vehicle pursuits, and harassment, that's already turned lethal. You're no longer dealing with civil disobedience. No, that's a fact. We are way past civil disobedience. We're facing a distributed resistance that's learned the lessons of successful insurgencies. Stay below the kinetic threshold most of the time, force overreactions when possible, maintain popular support through narrative, and never present a single center of gravity. And when you already have the mainstream liberal media on your side, a lot of this is already easy to do as far as maintaining popular support, because you have the mainstream liberal media who's going to push the narrative that everything that the Trump administration does is evil, and everything that these protesters do, they'll find some excuse to justify it. I spent years training partner forces to dismantle exactly this kind of apparatus. Now, pieces of it are standing up in American cities, enabled by elements of local government and civil society. That should keep every thinking American awake at night. Not because I want escalation, but because history shows these things don't de-escalate on their own. Once the infrastructure exists and the cadre believes they're winning the information war. We either recognize what we're actually looking at, or we pretend it's still just activism until the structures harden and spread. Your call, America, but from where I sit, this isn't January 2026 politics anymore. It's phase one of something we spent decades trying to keep off our own soil. And so now, the FBI Director Kash Patel confirms investigation into the chat network, and something got to come from it. It can't just be pointless investigations. We got to see some people. We got to see some people in cuffs. We got to see some people in cuffs, and ultimately, we got to see some politicians in cuffs also. We got to see some Democrat politicians who allowed this to go on, who were in that group, who stoked the flames and fire of chaos. We got to see them also in handcuffs also. But let's listen to Kash Patel real quick. Take a listen.
Okay, so this is breaking news. So you and the FBI and perhaps other intelligence agencies are fully aware of this coordinated effort to attack federal law enforcement, to impede them and potentially insurrect. And so there is now an open investigation into these chats and into this coordinated network.
Yeah,
because
some of them
are fleeing. Some of them are very scared now. You can see their chats. They're very, very worried now that they have been exposed.
Well, they should be. If they broke the law, you should be worried. It's that simple. If you didn't break the law, there's really nothing to worry about on that front. And so, we're going to continue, as I've said from day one, we will protect law enforcement. We will make sure they have the security and safety to do their jobs. We will also ensure that civilians have the ultimate protection of the First and Second Amendment. But it is my job to adjudicate the difference when there is a breaking of federal statute or state law in the furtherance of a crime or violence against law enforcement officers. And that's when we step in.
And so ultimately what we may find out is that the very thing that they use to their advantage to try and dismantle and overthrow government may be the very thing that actually does them in as far as once all the pieces get put together. When you combine the chat, the Signal app, and then also when you combine and you find information as far as out with the Single Gate donors list. Now check this out. Breaking Signal Gate donors list available for download. Politician, foreign leadership confirmed. And one of the files revealed by Cam Higbee. He was one of the private journalists doing investigative reporting. Resource files directed people with money to a website, Stand With Minnesota, which in turns direct donors to a campaign ran by Tending the Soil on Chuffed. More about Tending the Soil later. What to know about the campaign is hosted by Chuffed, and the first donation came from Johnny Sapotnik, if I'm saying that correctly, a Canada-based community organizer who is part of a Chuffed leadership and specialized in fundraising. He is most likely a central figure in raising money. So yeah, starting to look like foreigners are playing a key role in all of this. I don't want to see the Trump administration back down right now. I'm perfectly fine with Tom Homan stepping in. He's probably better equipped, well suited to do this particular job in Minnesota right now anyway. But these people need to go down for this. These people need to suffer the full consequences and weight of their actions. And so we'll have to see and wait and see what comes of this as far as charges, arrest, and everything else once they gather all the evidence and then are able to hold the proper people accountable. But now, let me hear from you. Drop your comments down below. As always, smash the thumbs up. That's how I know you like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more and share this video. That way more people see what's really going on. Until next time.